Welcome to the channel. I'm Tom. I am recording this at my table, and today I'm going to be having a look at what I think is probably the best budget PC build that you can put together in mid-2023. Now, this isn't going to be the absolute cheapest build that you can put together, but I don't like pulling together systems that just have no upgrade path. I like to have a little bit of an upgrade path, even if I'm doing like a budget PC. So hopefully with some of my reasons, you'll also agree that this is probably one of the best budget PCs you can put together. So, as you can see, I am using PC Part Picker, and it is basically like any PC enthusiast's sort of heaven, I'd guess. It's not absolutely perfect, but it's pretty damn good. Now, while the prices you're about to see are in pounds because I'm here in the UK, my American viewers, have no fear, I've got you covered. I'm also going to go over a US version of the list, and both of the lists are going to be down in the description of this video if you want to go check them out. Also, if you are in another country, then hopefully you can still use this video as a sort of rough guide for when you pick your parts, and if some of the parts are unavailable in the video, I'm going to be giving a few alternatives to parts if you cannot find. Starting off with our first part, which is going to be the processor, then we've gone for the i3-12100F, and is a 4-core 8-thread processor. And you might be thinking, why didn't you go for a 6-core 12-thread processor? And the reason is just simply that it's just so cheap and it's so good for the money. If you want to have a look at the video I did where I put this in with an A770 GPU, then go have a look at that, because it performs so well. I was actually shocked at how well it does. I wasn't really expecting it, really. So yeah, for the price difference, I think a 6-core CPU, for example, like the Ryzen 5 5600, not the X version, just the 5600, which is basically like the X version, that was coming in at around £120, 115, something like that. So just by going with the Intel part, we're already going to be saving £35–40, which, to be fair, with the performance that it has, I think it's worth it. But if you did want to go for a more productive PC, then do try to find maybe the 5600 on a deal, because the more threads and cores that it has, it's going to give you a bit more of a benefit in those production workloads. But since we're looking at simply just a gaming focused rig, then I think this is plenty for most people. What I also like about the 12100F is that it shares the 13th gen socket, which is the LGA 1700. So this basically means that you have a bit of an upgrade path so that you can go from 12th gen to 13th gen, and yeah, it just gives you a little bit of a path that you can follow to get a bit more performance out of this PC. Moving on to the motherboard, then I've gone for the MSI Pro H610MB DDR4 Micro ATX board. And the reason I've gone for the DDR4 variant instead of DDR5 is basically just to do with pricing on DDR5 memory and the DDR5 supported boards. So we're going to be saving money both on the board and on the actual memory. And to be fair, the performance loss isn't really too major, especially with this sort of CPU and the graphics card that we're going to be pairing with it. So I've gone with this one, £69, basically £70. Nice and cheap, no frills, but will do everything that you need it to. So talking of memory, we've gone for the Corsair Vengeance LPX, and we've gone for 2x 8GB sticks of 3200 MHz speed RAM. So DDR4 RAM at the moment has gotten really cheap. It's really come down in price, and for 3200 MHz speed, for £36, 35, you can find it maybe slightly more expensive or slightly cheaper, but yeah, for £36 you can't really go wrong. And yes, we're going to max out with 16GB. I think at this point in time there's no point really going for 8GB of RAM, even if you go dual channel. It's just not enough anymore. So we've gone with a minimum of 16 now, and yeah, should help everything run smoothly and not create a bottleneck. And moving on to our storage for this PC, we've gone with the Samsung 970 EVO Plus, and this is an NVMe SSD, which is a 1TB capacity. And for only £55, I thought this was a pretty good deal. You could go with a 240GB SSD and then get a hard drive, but to be honest, I think you'd roughly approach this price anyway. And as games are getting more demanding, like we've seen with Starfield, that it requires an SSD, I think it's just worth now just going all in for an SSD and having all your storage on that. But if you did want to opt for the option where you go for an SSD and hard drive because maybe you have like movies you want to store, lots of pictures, then by all means go ahead. You can probably get it for around the same price or maybe slightly more expensive if you're going to go with a slightly larger SSD and hard drive combo. Moving on to the most expensive part in our PC then, and maybe the most controversial part, but hopefully with my explanation of why I've included it, you'll also agree. We have the AMD RX 7600. Now, the reason I have gone for this is that at the moment it's £260. The performance level is above another card I was going to recommend, which was the Intel A750. So it's only about £30 more expensive than that. It's cheaper than a 3060 here in the UK at least, with performance in between a 3060 and a 3060 Ti. It's pretty close to a 3060 Ti. But another reason is also the fact that with these newer cards, the latest generation that is, you do usually get free gifts included, like in bundles. So for example, here we have Resident Evil 4 included. It's not the absolute best bundle I've ever seen. Like sometimes you will see 2 or 3 games included. It just depends when you click on the sites, and different sites will maybe give you different bundles and things like that. But then the biggest reason why I've gone with this is because like DLSS 3 is exclusive to the 40 series cards for Nvidia, FSR 3 when it comes out will also be exclusive to the 7000 series for AMD. So you may not like it, but DLSS and FSR and these upscaling technologies are here to stay. And so basically what this means is you're going to be able to squeeze more frames, more performance out of this card than you would, say, a 3060 Ti that's stuck on DLSS 2. The same with a 6650 XT, which is basically the exact same performance as this, but again it is stuck on FSR 2. So this is also giving you a little bit of a future proofing, let's say. Then for our case, I've gone for the Deepcool Matrix 43FS. Which does have a tempered glass side panel. It has 3 included 120mm RGB fans. It is a micro ATX case, but that's fine because we have a micro ATX motherboard, and the graphics card should fit fine. And yeah, it's a cheap, quite nice looking case, I gotta say. I quite like it. It might feel a little bit cheap at the front, like the plastic, great, but it's got a decent design, I think. And yeah, this is one of those things that it's really personal, up to you how much you want to spend. I typically don't really like spending too much on a case just because it's not really going to get you any performance. The only thing I look for really is just how well optimized it is for airflow, basically. And this one seems not too bad. So £40 for our case. And then moving on to our PSU, we have the Colink Classic Power 700 watt, 80 plus bronze PSU. And yeah, this is one that I have used before, and I've used Colink in the past before as well, and I've never had a problem with their power supplies. I tend to try stay with power supplies that I know. And you're probably thinking that this PSU is way too high a wattage. We don't even need anything close to that, really. But again, I just like to have a little bit of headroom so that if you are looking to upgrade the GPU and then the processor as well, then you've got that headroom. You don't have to always swap out the power supply. Also, cheaper power supplies as well that do have lower wattage, they're not really that much cheaper. You're saving maybe £5-10, if that, really. But if you can't find this one, there's also EVGA has pretty decent power supplies at this price point. But yeah, that is my list for here in the UK, so let me know what you think, if you'll change anything. So now we'll move on to the US part list, which is basically the exact same as this one, just with 1 or 2 differences. So for our first part on the US list that is different, I have gone for the case, which is the Montec X3 Mesh, which comes with a glass side panel, and it's on hinges as well, so it's very nice for when you want to swap out parts. And the reason I've gone for this, while the Deepcool one was available on the US PC Part Picker List site, the reason I've gone for this is that it has 340mm and 120mm RGB fans included, which is pretty good, and it does look very well ventilated as well. It looks like it's got mesh at the front, and mesh is in the name actually, so I'm pretty sure it does. And yeah, so you're getting 6 fans included, which yeah, is not too shabby. So that's why I've gone for this one instead. It is a slightly bigger case as well, as it is a mid-tower case and not a micro ATX case. But yeah, I think for the money, it's pretty good value. And then for our last change, we have gone for the power supply, which is the Seasonic S12 Free series, and it is a 650 watt 80 plus bronze rated PSU. And I don't know why, but in the US it seems like power supplies are a lot more expensive than here. This was one of the cheapest ones I could find that was from a brand that I know is pretty good. So yeah, that's why I've gone for this one really. You can get cheaper ones, but a lot of those brands I really wasn't sure who they were basically, so I didn't go for them. But you could get a slightly cheaper power supply. So yeah, those are my changes for the US list. Like I said, they will both be in the description below. But let's go and have a look at the final prices of the lists. So for the final price of the UK list, we come in at a total of £587.56. That's including, I think, £3 shipping. And then for the US pricing list, we come in at $662.15. Well, there you have it. That's what I think is the best budget build of mid-2023. Obviously not the lowest of low-end budgets, but not the highest by any stretch of imagination either. And yeah, we've got a solid 1080p performer, also 1440p I would reckon, especially once FSR 3 comes out. And yeah, do let me know what you think of these parts, what you would have changed, or if you agree with me. And if you liked it, leave a like, I would greatly appreciate it. And also hit the sub button as well, I would also appreciate that. But that's going to be all from me. Bye!